Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Football Diehards Sunday Live Show. I am Armando Marçal, and as always, I got Bobby Gomes with me. How's it going, Bobby?
It's going well, going well. Excited for week 2.
Yeah, me too, man. It's a lot of news this week, a lot of injuries, some surprises like the Josh Gordon situation. It looks like the latest report, Blaine Gabbert will start for the Titans. It's not confirmed, but that's what it's looking like. So a lot of moving parts. So I think this is a good way to kick off, Sunday, and we're probably going to have some changes throughout the show. Any news impact so far that you're kind of taking advantage of?
Not right now. Just kind of everything's kind of on up and up. A couple of my plays have changed, but that was within the last 24 hours. It's nothing like recent. I think the Darren Sproles being out news. I think it came out Friday. Is probably pretty interesting to me. I'm overweight on Clement.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good call there because I do think Clement will be catching passes out of the backfield for the Eagles there. I think there's some news as far as non-fantasy relevant when it comes to people in your lineup, but some key offensive lines are hurting. And, when you look at Carolina, I believe they have 2 or 3 starting offensive line out today. The Titans are also beat up in the offensive line. And like I mentioned, Blaine Gabbert might be starting there. The Houston Texans defense on DraftKings to me at 2,600 is just pretty much a free square this week. They have a really good pass rush, and it's a defense that can totally get some turnovers and sacks and potentially turn one of those into a touchdown. I know we talked a little bit about them on our podcast this week, but we didn't go in depth because there was still a lot of uncertainties. Have you been, pivoting now to? I know we talked about the Rams and stuff like that up there, but have you been pivoting to the Texans to save some cash?
Yeah, I've Houston everywhere. I had them kind of earlier in the week, so I expected Blaine Gabbert to kind of be the starter. So that news with the offensive line is just more of a reason to kind of plug Houston in, cash in.
Yeah, I agree. We both really like them, and I'm kind of bummed out that all this information is coming out now because I think a lot of people are going to be changing, and Texans are going to be far more on than they would have been had we had less news and less things about this offensive line. So, but it is what it is, and I'm definitely going to be pretty much playing them in every lineup just like you are. So, all right, let's jump into this game by game. Carolina at Atlanta. We talked about this game being, somewhat interesting. Matt Ryan is someone that, I feel like I should have in my lineups this week for some reason. He didn't look good in week 1, but he's just played so well against the Panthers here, and he's very, very cheap. I think him and Julio Jones make for an interesting stack. I don't have exposure to either right now, but I am seriously contemplating on changing that. Any thoughts in this game and these two guys, at least?
Yeah, so a lot of people have been mentioning Matt Ryan to me. I'm not the biggest Matt Ryan guy. I liked him when Kyle Shanahan was there, but Steve Sarkisian's kind of left a bad taste in my mouth for the Atlanta Falcons offense. I don't think I'm going there. I have some shares to Cam, though, on the other side. Keanu Neal's out, the safety for Atlanta, and also Deion Jones. So I think if you look at Cam's splits, I think he averages 19 with Greg Olsen in. Greg Olsen is out. He in 24 when he's out. Well, that was from last season in terms of DK fantasy points. So, like Cam a little. I don't know how much I'm going to use him, but I like Cam. I also think Torrey Smith's pretty interesting, or DJ Moore as like punts in tournaments, just because you have Keanu Neal, the safety, is out. So maybe Torrey Smith gets behind the backup, or DJ Moore. DJ Moore really only got 20% of the snaps last week. Torrey Smith only had 2 targets, but he's seen 75%, so I'd kind of lean Torrey at this point.
Are you playing any Devin Funchess in your lineups, in your cash game lineups? He's 4,700 on DraftKings with Greg Olsen off the field. I believe he accounts for about 25% of the target share for the Panthers. I think he's a little interesting here. Not a core play of mine. I think he is very cash viable, though. I think if you're playing cash this weekend, you really have to strongly consider Funchess at 4,700. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I like the call. Earlier in the week, I was on him in cash, and I kind of moved off of him as other value kind of opened up. Yeah, so he definitely plays better with Greg Olsen out of the lineup. McCaffrey should see a bunch more targets too. But like you talked about with the question marks on their offensive line, I don't know if you really want to go there in terms of and just for McCaffrey, if they had a solid offensive line at this point, might be a fringe cash play. I would say he's probably just a tournament play at this point for me.
Yeah, he's someone I have in sprinkled in my tournament lineups just because the Falcons are hurting in the middle of the field. They're dealing with a bunch of injuries there, and they were already vulnerable to pass catching back. So I definitely think McCaffrey could have a ceiling game here. I'm not projecting, otherwise I'd be far more exposed, but wouldn't be surprised to see him have a very decent game, and I still think he's reasonably priced considering the situation here.
Yeah, I went. No worries. I went down to Tevin Coleman. I'm overweight on Tevin Coleman in tournaments. Just think he's a solid play. You're getting him a lot cheaper than you're getting him at like an $1,800 discount compared to James Conner, or almost a 19. It's like an $1,800 to $1,900 discount for Conner and McCaffrey. So I think Tev's the cash game play, and I'm also running him in tournaments as well.
Yeah, Coleman is interesting to me. This is one of those things where I'm kind of torn whether how much exposure I want to him. Right now, I don't have a ton of exposure. I do think he's going to be very popular. I don't think this is the greatest of matchups for him, to be honest with you. And I don't know because I never see Atlanta really using a running back, 20 plus touches like that on a regular basis. So that kind of concerns me. I do think he's a very viable option because he's going to at least operate as, pretty much the every down back. I just don't know how many touches he's going to get operating under that. So at 5,300 though, I think it's a no-brainer. He is someone that I would have as a staple of my cash game line for sure. In tournaments, I'm probably going in a different direction though, because I just don't know if there's enough upside there for him. Anything else in this game that you're interested in before we move on to the next one?
I think we pretty much covered it.
All right, so we got Indy at Washington. We talked about this one pretty in depth. I know you had some interest in Andrew Luck. Are you still, are you still pretty much playing Andrew Luck this week?
I'm playing him on the early slate. I don't really have much exposure to him in terms of the Millionaire Maker. No, I think he's going overlooked. I think a lot of people are putting a lot on what he has on his shoulder, but in a game situation, like, is he really going to, like, if someone's open downfield, he's going to throw it. He's not going to worry about his shoulder. You know what I mean? So he's obviously a very talented quarterback. So I think with the lack of running game, like, he threw the ball 50 times, like you said on the podcast, there's variance to be accounted for there. So I don't mind starting Luck if I wouldn't have a beef with someone saying they starting him in tournaments.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And this has an interesting over/under. It's 48 points, which is pretty juicy this week, considering some of the some of the lines out there and some of the over/under. So I do have interest in this game. I mentioned on the podcast that I am interested in Alex Smith this week, and I'm still there. I still really like Alex Smith. Very cheap. They could be playing with a lead here, but even that being the case, last week they were playing with a lead. He attempted 30 passes, threw 2 touchdowns, and this is just one of those matchups where the Colts are just terrible defensively. And if we believe that Andrew Luck can keep it close and can get points on the board, I could see Alex Smith having a pretty decent day here. And I also am interested, him throwing the ball to Chris Thompson. We saw last week Thompson being very efficient in the passing game. And again, they were playing with a lead, but he still got 7 targets. So it's certainly a situation that I have plenty of interest in. And this is just the Washington. You got Jamison Crowder is very cheap, 4,900. Like in tournaments, I think pivoting from Devin Funchess to someone like a Jamison Crowder makes a lot of sense because Crowder's not going to see any ownership this week. He didn't do well in his first game, only 4 targets, but they were playing with a pretty decent lead. So I'm not surprised at all by that performance out of him. And Jordan Reed is someone that I'm also interested in. I'm just not paying up for tight ends. I'm going to go the cheaper route this week. But if you are paying up or you have, $5,000 left on your salary and you're looking for a tight end with plenty of upside, Jordan Reed makes a ton of sense to me. Any thoughts here on the Redskins side of the ball?
Yeah, you mentioned Crowder. I kind of like Doxson more as a tournament play just because last week he was covered by Patrick Peterson. People gonna forget about him. He's cheaper. I think he's around 4K. And I think that he can stretch the field. So as a tournament play, kind of for me makes more sense.
Yeah, and he's expected to see Quincy Wilson this week, which really grades out below average on over at Pro Football Focus as a cornerback. So definitely a good call there, I think, and good value here for the Redskins. Anything else in this game? I know people are ask about Adrian Peterson. I'm not going back, or I wasn't on him last week, but I'm not going to play him again this week. I just don't think that that he's going to be seeing that kind of volume on a week-to-week basis. And if we do anticipate this being a little closer than it was last week, I can see him, seeing far less touches than he did last week. Any thoughts there at 5,500 on DraftKings?
Not really on AP. I like Doyle. We didn't really hit on Doyle. I think Doyle's a phenomenal play. I think you'd use him in cash just because you have Pac-Man. I mean, you have Josh Norman covering TY. He might not stretch the field as much. Obviously, people have talked up Luck's shoulder. He's going to throw intermediate routes, and that's right where Doyle runs his routes. So I like Doyle for cash games and tournaments.
I think he's the chalk or one of the chalk tight ends of the slate, if I'm not mistaken. I believe he's going to be very high on. 10 targets last week, which is very good. He caught 7 of them for 60 yards. Didn't get the touchdown. It was Eric Ebron, but I think that can change. That can certainly change. I think he's the tight end
this week, right?
Exactly. I definitely think that could change it. And Shane is asking, do we think Doyle is a better play than Ebron? I think certainly is. I think we saw last week, he's going to be more involved. I think Ebron is going to have those big games, and then he's just going to have a whatever game and very inconsistent. So I feel much more confident with running Jack Doyle in my lineups this week if I had to choose between the two. Do you agree there?
Yeah, I'm with Doyle. A lot of Doyle.
Yeah. So, all right. Anything else before we move on to the next game? I think the next game is one that I have a little bit of interest in. That we talked a little bit about the pre-show. Anything else here in Indy and Washington?
No, we covered it.
All righty. Houston at Tennessee. We talked at the start of the show. Pretty much both of us all in on the Texans defense here. I just think it's a no-brainer at this price, considering the situation in Tennessee. Some things have changed for me here. I have a little bit more interest in Deshaun Watson and Hopkins than I did earlier in the week. I just feel, with Will Fuller back, that really increases Watson's upside and ceiling. And then it also really helps DeAndre Hopkins because defenses are going to have to kind of key in on Fuller here. And then someone I was a little bit higher on at the start of the week, reducing my exposure, is Dion Lewis. I just don't like this whole situation that's going on. It's still a decent spot for him, but I think, with the O-line issues and with the Gabbert potentially starting, it really, really decreases his ceiling here. So I'm kind of stepping away from that take that I had earlier in the week. What are your thoughts on this game?
Like the Texans D a lot. I'm kind of staying away from the offensive players on both sides of the ball. I don't really have much.
Yeah, it's one of those games where it would have had more. I would have had more interest in if it wasn't because some of these key injuries on the Tennessee side of things, because I really do think that it affects. I will have exposure to DeAndre Hopkins for sure. I think he's going to go unowned here in a spot where he can totally dominate. I still don't know if I'm going to be stacking him up with Deshaun Watson or not. But at this point, I will definitely have some DeAndre Hopkins exposure this week because I just think this is a really good spot. Aside from that, no interest in this game. Just Texans defense, DeAndre Hopkins for me, and maybe running it, with a Deshaun Watson stack. So if you have anything else to say here, we can. If not, we can just move on to the next one.
No, we can move on.
Philly at Tampa Bay. This is a game that, it's a really bad Bucs defense. You mentioned, Corey Clement. You have some interest there. It's a 46.5 over under. It's jumped up 2.5 points as it opened. Give me your thoughts here on the Philly and Tampa Bay Bucs game here.
Yeah, like the line movement, really high on Clement. You take out Alshon, you take out Sproles. Like, those targets have to go somewhere. Aguilar, I think, is a good play. Ertz is a good play. Don't even mind stacking this game. Not stacking the Bucs side, but basically stacking the Philly side, I would say. I'm not really too bullish on anything on the Bucs side.
Yeah, this is a game where I feel like I should have more interest in, but my interest is very little. I do like Nelson Aguilar. We spoke about it on the podcast. I just think that his week 1 performance was awful, but still 10 targets to me. That's something I take note of. I think he's going to see plenty of targets. We mentioned no Darren Sproles. I think it's just going to open up some target shares here. So Aguilar should be busy in a very, very positive matchup for him. So I do like him quite a bit. He's expected to see MJ Stewart. He has the second highest advantage rating of the week. And, MJ Stewart is just a very, very below average corner here. So like him quite a bit. I think he's going to go and own 6,100. My concern here is I don't know if there's enough upside to warrant him in tournaments, but I think I'm going to take that chance because I do like him in this matchup. I think it sets up very well for him.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good matchup for Aguilar. Only thing you have to worry about is ADOT's like a 1.2 after the Thursday night game where I think he had like 8 catches for like 23 yards. But
yeah, it was awful.
I think he'll be all right.
It was awful, man.
At least
like it was.
It's PPR. Who cares? We'll take all.
Any interest here in either of the defenses? I think Eagles are interesting. Just because Fitzpatrick loves to sling it, and yeah, he looked great last week or whatnot, but he makes some silly throws at times. And this Eagles secondary is really good. I think they can definitely get some points on the board here. What do you think?
For some reason, I wrote up the Bucs D. I definitely have regrets about writing them up on my article. Just hoping Nick Foles turns into Nick Foles at some point. But now I think I have a good allocation of Clement. I'm sorry. So hope Foles plays like Nick Foles in the Super Bowl this week.
I mean, if it was the Nick Foles like last week, then it'll be golden for you. It really would, because he didn't look good last week. He was someone that I said maybe you could throw a dart, have a dart throw out, but it's just too risky of a play. And with some of the value that's opened up in other positions, it's very easy to pretty much pay a little bit more for quarterback this week and fit in some of those cheaper running backs and receivers. This is it's just kind of the way I feel. You don't really need to go there. I do think we mentioned the plays here. I think we both like Aguilar to a certain extent. And I mean, aside from that, you can toss in the Eagles defense. I know Deshaun Jackson is going to play in this game, so I don't have any interest in Godwin because of that. I just think that kind of just clouds things up here, and the target share is going to be once again mixed up here. So I know there was some Godwin talk earlier in the week, but it's not a place I'm going, especially with some of the value that has already opened up. Any final thoughts here on Godwin? I know we have briefly spoken about him on the podcast.
I was just looking at him. I'm going to pass on Godwin. I think there's better spots you could go.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's move on to the next game, the game where if you don't have exposure to this weekend, Godspeed, man, because it's a high over under here. You got Chiefs at Pittsburgh, and this is a 52.5 over under. It's jumped up 2.5 points since the start. Both of these teams have healthy implied team totals of over 24 points. It's only a 4-point spread, so should not be a blowout on in any direction here. And it's just, I think there's going to be a ton of fantasy goodness in this game. Give me your thoughts here, Bobby.
Yeah, I like AB a lot. The 100-yard bonus on DraftKings, we're going for that this week. I like Juju. Like Tyreek Hill. I don't think he's had a fantasy game under double-digit points on the road in the last 10 games, so 10 or 12 games. So I think Tyreek's a really good play.
Yeah, we talked about him in depth last week, and we both, were pretty bullish on him. I agree. I think, very, very good play this week as well. I have a ton of interest in Kareem Hunt. He had a bad game last week. I just think that price is too cheap, 6,200. What are your thoughts there?
I'm afraid that they might they didn't use him in the passing game last week, so that kind of worries me. I don't really have any Kareem Hunt at the moment in tournaments.
Yeah, that was a concern of mine as well. That was a concern of mine as well. We talked about that on the pod. That was, to me, that was a big concern where he's just not involved. He was not involved in the pass game last week. I think that could change, though. I really do. I don't know if this is the week it'll change, but I think it will change throughout the course of the season. And then I also mentioned, the red zone with Spencer Ware, back, and he couldn't, take away some of those touchdowns. So there is some concerns there. I just think for his upside at that price, it's more of a price play than anything else for me. Do you like Mahomes here? I know a lot of people have been talking about him. I personally I'm not playing him much, but I know there's a lot of people in this industry that like him. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have exposure to Ben. Might be able to blame Shane. Just asked if can blame last week's performance by Ben on the weather. I think he just has horrible home road splits, but now he's at home, so I don't know. I think you could roll with Ben for Mahomes. A little nervous about Mahomes. I don't know.
Me too. I'll be honest with you. I am too. I mean, I know we both mentioned that. I'm nervous about him. It's a road game.
That's a good thing if you're rostering Tyreek, but he might throw 2 picks.
Yeah. And that's that's kind of why I have interest in Kareem Hunt, because this is not an easy road game for this team. I mean, it's really not. And last week it was was on the road as well. I think in the Chargers, but division game a little bit more. You have more information on a team that you play twice a year than you do in this situation. And yeah, I agree with you, Shane, with answering Shane's question. Big Ben, to me, not only was the weather an issue, but he plays far, far better at home than he does on the road. And not only that, it was a division game. I think that sometimes can go overlooked. He's asking now, Connor. Bobby said it last week, all in on Connor. That was a chalk that I was fading, unfortunately. It caused me from having a huge weekend. I had a decent weekend, but it did cause me from having a huge weekend. Are we going back to James Conner? Because I am. I still think he's under. Oh no! Come on! Why are we doing this? Yeah. Why are you fading him?
I think Tevin Coleman's in a better situation. Not a better situation. Just I think that for the price, I think Tevin Coleman offers just as much. Not just as much, obviously a little below, but hopefully you can get within a couple points of him, and it works out for tournaments. I'm overweight on Coleman.
I think Coleman's going to be just as popular.
Yeah, no, he might be.
I'm looking at labs here, and Coleman is 26 to 30%. Connor up to 50%, but I don't think Connor's going to be 50%.
50%.
41 to 50. I don't trust.
You have to fade that.
I have minor exposure. He's all right. I'm not all in on him by any means this week. I have exposure, but I'm not all in on him.
I'm not saying he won't have a good game, but I just think you go to a guy like Clement. as a pivot play in tournaments and use Coleman or James White and then use Gurley. I don't know.
I'm using Kamara and McCaffrey combinations quite a bit, and then I also have some Hunt.
Yeah, I'm fading McCaffrey too.
Yeah, well, in tournaments, not in cash.
No,
I mean, that's what I'm running right now.
I'm not playing them in tournaments.
You're not playing them in tournaments either?
No.
Well, we'll talk about another running back to that.
I might be just burning my money, but
no. Coleman is in the smash spot. We talked about that earlier. I mean, it to me, it's just I don't know if there's a huge ceiling there. I really don't know if there's a huge ceiling. But there was a way, and I didn't like my lineup, but I'm still.
I want to play, and that's why there's a guy I think it's a kind of a huge leverage play, and that's kind of why I had to make a decision. So, I went away from those guys.
Well, I guess we'll hear about that guy. I mean, this is just a great game. I think Antonio Brown, probably the best, in my opinion. He's probably the best play of the weekend, ahead of any player at all. I mean, I think if you're going to prioritize any high-priced player, it should be Antonio Brown, because there's just good value in every other position, and you can definitely fit him in this week. I think throwing Big Ben out there, he's going to be popular, but I think you should have exposure to Big Ben this weekend. I like the running backs on both sides of the field. We haven't talked about Travis Kelce much. I think he's an interesting play. I don't have exposure to him, but I do think he's an interesting tournament play because I don't think he's going to be highly owned here. What are your thoughts there on him?
I have some tournament exposure running it back with him, but not like a ton.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't have any ton of exposure. I'm actually going very cheap at tight end this week, and man, I'm so scared. I am so scared.
Way up.
Yeah, I know where you're going. I'm going someone else in that game, though. I'm going someone else in that game. I have a lot of exposure to that person. We'll get to that game a little later. There's a question here in that we haven't gotten to, and it's I'm looking for a cash QB for a double up on DraftKings. You have been doing a ton of cash game lineups, so who's your cash quarterback for the week on DraftKings?
I think I have Garoppolo on the main slate, and on the early I have Luck, I think.
Yeah, I think Garoppolo's the play in cash. I think that's as safe as you can get. Really good matchup, very affordable, and you can pair him up with Kittle, who I think is a very good, viable cash game tight end. Do you agree with that? Because I know you run a bunch more cash than I do. I dabble in cash for that. I'm more of a tournament player. Huh?
Kittle's the guy in cash, I think.
That's what I thought too. So I think pairing both of those make a lot of sense. So I do like that. So pretty much to wrap this up, because we've been in this game for quite some time, it's a game you want exposure to. If we're talking about who's the core play and who's the best option, I think Antonio Brown by far. But I don't think you can go wrong with anyone from this game. There's plenty of ways you can kind of stack it up here. So feel free to do that. I think Big Ben is one of the top quarterbacks on the slate, and to me, Antonio Brown is just the top player on the slate by far, in my opinion. Any final words here, Bobby, before we move on to another game here?
No, we covered everything.
Miami and the Jets. This is quite frankly a game that I have very little interest in. I talked about earlier in the week Isaiah Crowell at 4,600. I do think he's an interesting play, but considering some of the value that has opened up and some of the injuries that have popped up, I don't think it's necessary to go there at 4,600. So I have right now zero exposure to this game. It's not a game that I'm thinking of investing in by any means. There are some players you can go to here, like I mentioned, in Crowell. We've talked about Enunwa, before, but I just don't see the merit in going here. Give me your thoughts on this game, Bobby.
What was it again? Say it. I'm sorry.
The Jets Dolphins game, the Jets and Dolphins game.
Oh, the Jets Dolphins. I don't know. I like Darnold earlier in the week. I know that sounds crazy, but I kind of just moved off that.
They're coming for you?
I think so.
You better get those lineups in quickly there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have much interest here, man. It's a game I'm pretty much a full fade for right now. There's no reason, in my opinion, to go here. If you have nothing, we can really move on to the next game.
Yeah, we can just move on.
Yeah. Chargers, huh? And Enunwa Cash. Yeah, I mentioned Enunwa is someone that you can go to. I think the volume is going to be there. I do think this is a tougher matchup than it was last week for him. And then we did talk about that in the podcast, but I just don't, Funchess is in that same price range. We got, a couple other receivers we'll talk about a little later. We talked about Crowder already, who's in that price range as well. So in a better spot. So there are definitely some slot receivers that you can go to here in that same price range with less risk, in my opinion, and in better matchups. So they're asking if the Jets on the chat room here, they're asking if the Jets defense is a negative. I just, you know what, for 100 more on DraftKings, I just feel like the Texans is such a better play. I would really try to find the extra 100. And I think this week it shouldn't be difficult to find 100. I know earlier in the week pricing was tough and a little tight, but with so many of these injuries popping up throughout the week and more so now at the end of the week, I think finding an extra 100 to play the Texans makes a lot of sense. Do you agree there, Bobby?
I don't hate the Jets D in tournaments. They're going up against Ryan.
Okay, which is fine. I mean, they looked good last week. It is a division game, so they can definitely post some numbers here. I'm having trouble coming off of the Texans defense myself. So let's move on to this next game. The Chargers at the Bills. This is a game where I want to have more interest in. Again, I just don't. I do have a player that I think is a very sharp player, or not sharp, but a very good player, and that's Melvin Gordon, 7,400. The usage is through the roof. The game script should favor him. I know we've talked about the traveling from the west to the east, which is a concern for us.
Has that line moved?
Has that line moved? Let me check right now. I will let you know. It looks like it's moving. It looks like it actually moved 2.5 points down, 41.5.
No Melvin Gordon.
Yeah. The Chargers implied team total down a point. 1.25 points. I still think it's a positive game script for him. I still think that he's going to see the volume. He's not a core play of mine by any means, but I think it'd be silly not to talk about him. Really, really good down. A really good situation for him. I said it last week as well. I said we might regret not having him in our lineups, and he scored 30 DK points. I'm not saying that's the case here, but I do think it's a positive game script. That I am concerned that there is that one concern of the traveling from the west to the east, which to me is something you really have to factor in when you're paying up for these running backs. Keenan Allen is always a good play in my opinion. I'm not going there this week, just because my line of construction and my build is not fitting him in. And him and Phillip Rivers are always in good plays. They're in smash spots here, but again, we saw Flacco have a big game against his Bills defense last week. I'm not saying that we're going to expect the same from Rivers, but you have to take that into consideration, and he's going to be virtually unowned here in a really, really good spot. Any thoughts on this game for you?
Yeah, so Travis Benjamin's out. I think that makes Mike Williams viable. Also, yeah, Gordon, them going across country, the line moving like that, I'm kind of off Gordon. I have him in tournaments, so I'll probably have to take him out of some tournament lineups for the early slate after this.
Yeah, I'm doing the same. I actually have him in lineups. I'm literally doing the same right now. I'm taking him out. That was the other running back, and that line just moved now. So
Bills are tough. Bills are tough at home. Like I wouldn't. Buffalo's a tough place to play. So all that travel and then even though they're terrible, it's like probably one of the worst run defenses we've seen.
Yeah,
I just wouldn't mess with it.
Yeah, it's one of those. And you never know. This game, we saw that we saw the game get out of control last week against them. It's a situation. It's a kind of situation that you want to kind of avoid entirely. I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm not playing him. He looked horrible last week. In this game could get out of control. I wouldn't be surprised that they hand the rock off to McCoy as much as possible early on to kind of keep the ball out of Allen's hands. And that's Josh Allen, the quarterback. But there's no way.
Rivers' hands as well.
Huh?
In Rivers' hands as well if they run the ball.
Yeah, exactly. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them at least try to establish a run game. I don't know how effective it's going to be, but just food for thought. It is something. I will not be playing McCoy this week whatsoever. Zero McCoy, but it is something worth noting, which can also limit that Chargers upside a little bit here. Any interest in the Chargers defense? They're one of the top as far as price defenses on the board. I did mention them in a podcast as a kind of going there, but again, I 100% Houston Texans defense for me, so I have no reason to look elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
All right, let's move on to the next game. I think this is a pretty interesting game here. Minnesota at Green Bay. Let me see if there's been any line movement here. But as I look, give me your thoughts on this game, where you're at on this game with the Vikings in Green Bay.
Do we have word on Rodgers yet?
I believe he's going to. I believe he's going to give it a go. I don't believe he's gonna.
I know Adams.
Huh?
Adams is active.
And so is Rodgers. Yep, I got here. Rodgers is officially active, so he's going to play. Adams is active. Looks like they're gonna give him a go. It is a concern because I heard on the radio this morning that this just came out actually right now at 11:30. Rodgers active and so is Adams. But I heard on the radio this morning that his type of injury can be up to a month where it takes to heal. And this is a tough pass rush, and he's not going to be too mobile. I think in that pocket, it's concerning situation for me for this Packers offense. What are your thoughts here on that?
I like Cobb.
Yeah, me too. I like Cobb a ton. I like him a ton. I do like him a ton. I think he's going to go unowned here.
I just made a lineup I want to change.
Now, do you think he's going to be popular? I don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so.
No.
You have to go Funkus and Cash, you think?
I think Funkus is a good cash game play. I just think there's a safe floor. I really do, considering the potential volume he's going to get this week.
Yeah. I was thinking
about Cobb and Cash. I prefer Cobb in tournaments because I don't think he's going to have ownership, and this is a game where I do think the Vikings are going to put some points on the board. I actually have a lot of interest in Adam Thielen in this game. I think we saw last week he received
Allison. Someone got it. I like Allison.
Yes, me too. I think that's a pretty good tournament play. I don't think he's going to have any ownership. There is a low floor there with Addison, but I do think there's plenty of upside like we kind of saw last week. So I do like that. I'm staying away from the Packers run game. Are you taking any of these running backs? I know some people had asked about Jamal Williams, and I've seen some buzz about Jamal Williams on Twitter. It's not a situation I'm gonna target.
Yeah, I'm not going with Williams this week.
They're asking Thielen or Diggs. I really like Thielen this week. I think it's a sneaky spot for him. We saw the target share favor him last week, and it's just one of those situations where when you're looking at tournaments and you're looking at lineup build, I'm easily fitting him in, and I'm happy with that. I don't think he's going to garner any ownership, and I think there's plenty of upside here, especially in PPR formats against, in my opinion, a Packers secondary that's not all that imposing. So I do like him. I don't mind playing Diggs either if you want the savings, but I'd much rather Thielen in this spot. Any thoughts on those two?
I have a good amount of Diggs. No Thielen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can go here, in my opinion, in any direction. And again, you are getting the savings.
I don't think either or is a bad play, to be honest.
Me either. That's what I'm saying. Like for instance, like I'll have like 73 left in my wide receiver position. I just go to Thielen, just naturally go to Thielen. But I have no problem playing Diggs. I do think this is a sneaky stack. Like, really do think Cousins, to the east.
Oh yeah, definitely a sneaky stack.
I really do think like this is one of this. I would not be surprised to see that this being the stack that wins it all, like all the money this weekend. I really wouldn't be shocked at all.
It could be really interesting.
Yeah, that's why I said I like this game. I like the Viking side of the ball, son. I wouldn't mind running it back with someone like Cobb or even Addison if you want to go there, but I'll feel much better about going with Cobb here. Any interest? I know you mentioned Dalvin Cook on the podcast a little bit. What are you any interest there? Are you still on him? If you moved off?
I'm still if you stack up this game, yeah, I have Dalvin. I don't really have him in tournaments.
Okay, so now if you had to go Dalvin Cook or Connor this weekend, who would you go?
Probably Connor, but
okay. I know you're full fading him.
Rodgers is playing. I really haven't thought about it because I didn't know the status for Rodgers. So maybe Cook.
I feel like this is a game I'm going to end up with a little bit more exposure than I did this morning. Once we get off the show, because I do have interest in Thielen, and I like Diggs as well. I like that, kind of like that, 55 to 7K range at receiver quite a bit. I think there's a lot of good.
Yeah, I'm going to make lines right now.
I know you are. I know you trust me. I know you are. Any final thoughts here? I really am excited to get to this next game, but any final thoughts here?
I don't know. I think we pretty much got it done with.
Cleveland at New Orleans. This line has jumped significantly, and it's been mostly, if not all, the Saints. It's 50.5 over under. It was 47.5 when it opened. The Saints have a 30.25 implied team total. I read something on Twitter yesterday that when you look at the Saints against the coach for the Browns, or one of the coaches for the Browns, they love to run up the score. I don't know, how accurate that is or whatnot, but this line movement is really standing out to me. I think this is where you can win a tournament with the Saints offense. Give me your thoughts here. I really like going back to that trio we talked about. I was bullish on Drew Brees in week 1. I said it. I don't mind the 3-man stack. We talked about that pretty in depth on the podcast last week on the show. So I like going back to Drew Brees here. I think there's enough value that you can run Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, and Kamara once again. There is a potential blowout. That is a concern, of course, because they are 10-point favorites. But I'm still okay with running these three in a tournament lineup. What are your thoughts here for the Saints and Browns game?
I don't really have much exposure to the Saints other than Kamara on the early slate, and then some Kamara in tournaments. Just like too expensive to get up to.
Now, even with that line change, that doesn't. You're not having second thoughts there?
No, I am now that we're talking.
Well, that's the only reason why, because I wasn't as exposed.
Sorry, no, I don't think that the Browns can keep up.
And that's my big concern.
For Kamara, to be honest.
And that's my big concern. Like, can they keep up? It's just, I don't know, because that defense looked so bad last week. So bad. I mean, pretty bad, but I don't know. I'm definitely gonna have exposure to this game. I'm definitely gonna at least have one. I'm not running many lineups this week, but I definitely am gonna have at least one where I run a 3-man New Orleans stack here, just because I think it's a great spot. for them.
Yeah.
On the other side, any interest in Jarvis Landry? I think he's very, very cheap at 6,300. No Josh Gordon. What are your thoughts here on him?
No, I'm pretty much I like Jarvis and cash, but not for tournaments. I just don't think the touchdown equity is there.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I don't have much exposure to him myself. Actually, at this time I have zero exposure to him, but I don't know. I feel like this is one of those games where it might be kind of going a little bit overlooked because of that Pittsburgh Kansas City game, and Saints offense just can put up points with on the board at a quick pace, and could definitely be you could see these kind of these kind of stacks be at the top of the leaderboard on come the end of Sunday. So anything else here? I pretty much I really like the Saints side of things. In cash games, I have no issue with someone like Landry. I'm not going all in. One tournament play for me is David Njoku. He's only 3K. He wasn't all that great week one, but still got 7 targets. Now with Gordon out, I think Njoku's going to be pretty much the red zone guy here. So I think his touchdown equity is pretty high. He's 3K. No one's talking about him this week, and if they are chasing points like we expect them to, there's a good chance that he's going to be peppered with targets. Your thoughts on him?
No, I like Njoku. I think that's a good call.
Yeah, I'm gonna he's one of the 2 tight ends, and there's one more that's a little bit cheaper than he is that I'm pretty much building my lineups around this week. So hopefully this game script that I do think will favor him here quite a bit. Anything else here before we move on to the next game? Again, go ahead and I like New Orleans side of the ball. There's a potential blowout, but if they are blowing them out, I think that means that they scored plenty of fantasy points already.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
All right, so let's move on here. Detroit at San Francisco. You have talked about Jimmy Garoppolo being a staple of your cash game lineups. I agree with that. I think he is a very, very strong play. I also have interest in him in tournaments. We mentioned George Kittle here being a very, very good play. I think he along with Doyle will probably be the 2 highest owned tight ends of this week. And with, rightfully so, I think they're both really strong plays. There's another player on this Niners offense that I have interest in here is Dante Pettis, 4K only. What are your thoughts there? I think, you can go there in cash games. I think even in tournaments, he's a viable option. Any thoughts?
No, I like the call on Pettis a lot. I think he's a good play, not only for tournaments, but for cash. Just with Goodwin, if Goodwin's ruled out, obviously. I think he has been though, correct?
Yeah, Goodwin is out.
Yeah, but I'm all for some Pettis.
Yeah, I like that. I think he's going to pretty much be one of those value plays that you go to. That 4K is just too cheap. We saw last week he played a decent amount of snaps. He only got 5 targets, but I still think that Pettis should be involved in this game, and he's already been named the receiver that will replace Goodwin. So that's a good sign, in my opinion. And I do think he'll be, somewhat popular this week, but I'm okay with that, because he's going to be popular for a reason. Any other plays here? Do you like anything on the Detroit side? I think Stafford is kind of a sneaky tournament play. I don't have exposure to him, but I think he's a sneaky tournament play because everyone's just going, off of last week. He looked terrible, and he did. But I don't know. He still threw the ball 46 times. I know they were chasing points and whatnot, but he's that type of quarterback that, he can, have a game like that and come back the following week and, put up, 25 plus fantasy points. I'm not bullish on him. He's not a core play of mine, but I do find him to be an interesting tournament play. What are your thoughts there?
Not really high on Stafford. I like Galladay some.
Okay. Yeah, I've been getting a lot of Galladay questions. 4,800 I think makes some sense. I wouldn't, fault anyone for going there. But I don't have much exposure. I think Golden Tate's. I mentioned this in the podcast and we talked about it. I still think Golden Tate is a solid play for 15 targets last week. Still think he's going to be the Stafford's go-to. And in the slot, I like him quite a bit. So this is one of those games where more of a cash game type of game for me, because there are some cash viable options. I don't see a ton of tournament interest for me here. Any final thoughts before we move on to the next one?
No, I think we got it.
All right, Arizona at the Rams. Give me your thoughts here. I know a lot of questions are Gurley or Kamara. Who are we playing? Let's break this down. I'm
playing Gurley. I just think he's going to out-touch him significantly. So it just makes sense for cash and in tournaments. I'm going back to Gurley. I like the whole Rams offense. I like Goff. I like Kupp. I like Woods. Cooks is going to be on Peterson. Arizona's kind of like a funnel defense, so they sometimes funnel the pass. Gurley will be utilized not only in the pass game, but also in the running game. The line's 11, so I think Arizona might be able to not hang in a little bit early on, more than what the Browns would in the Saints game. I think the majority of their offensive weapons work the middle of the field, and that's kind of where I think the Rams are vulnerable. So I don't think they're going to hang in for a long time, but hopefully long enough.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Gurley, and that's the battle I've pretty much been having all week. Gurley or Kamara. I'm going to try to balance them out pretty evenly in my lineups this week. Unfortunately, I'm not able. I mean, I don't think it's possible to fit them both in and be excited about your lineup. To be honest with you, I know there's been a ton of value opening up, but still, it's still too leaves too low of a floor as far as the lineup construction is concerned when you fit those two in. I like Kupp quite a bit. I think this is a good spot for him. We saw him, with 9 targets last week. I still think he's going to be one of those receivers that sees plenty of targets. We saw it last year where he was one of Goff's go-to guys. So I like that call on Kupp. The other tight end I was alluding to pretty much throughout the show is Ricky Seals-Jones, and you nailed it as far as where the Rams are most vulnerable, and that's the middle of the field. We saw Jared Cook have a huge game here, and Ricky Seals-Jones at 2,900 to me is interesting. He didn't have a great week one by any means. He did see 6 targets, and there was he did drop a potential touchdown pass. So could have scored, and things would have been differently, I think, if you're looking at the game log here. So I do have interest in him. I'm paying on tight ends this week, and it's going to be pretty much Njoku and Ricky Seals-Jones. What are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on Seals-Jones here?
No real thoughts in terms of cash games, but for tournaments, I think he's viable. Why not? I like Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
If you stack up this game to run it back.
Yeah, I agree, and pretty much I'm me and Seals-Jones is tournament only. I would not play him in cash. I think the cash tight ends are George Kittle and Jack Doyle. If you ask me, we have some questions. So someone asked, did you say Kamara was your only play on the Saints and Browns game? In the Saints and Browns game? No.
Kamara and Landry for cash, Kamara for cash and tournaments. You could use them. I like Gurley better than Kamara, though.
Okay. And then someone's asking Garcon or Stills. I'm not a Garcon guy. I don't know. I'm assuming this is for tournament because I wouldn't be playing either of these two in cash. And if that's the case, I'd probably go Stills because I just feel there's more upside.
I honestly don't hate Garcon this week, especially with the line. And I know he's going to be covered by Darius Slay, but he's the veteran in that offense. So I think I'd lean more Garcon in tournaments. Might be a horrible call by the end of the day, but
no, I think the path for volume is much easier for Garcon than it is for Stills. That's for sure, in my opinion. If I'm going in tournaments, I'm just still looking for the higher upside, and I just think that would be Stills at this point. But Someone's also asking, did you say you like Cooks? I don't think you like Cooks this week.
No, I don't like Cooks.
Yeah, neither do I. I'm with you on that. On FanDuel, someone says, okay, well, they're saying they can fit Kamara, Coleman, Gurley, and Antonio Brown. I don't play on FanDuel, but if that's very possible, and I mean, I should be playing on FanDuel. I think if you can fit those guys in with no problem. Bradford,
yeah, pretty much do whatever you want on FanDuel.
Yeah, I don't play there, but maybe I should. Maybe I'm losing out on potential winnings by not playing on FanDuel. It says Bradford, DJ, RSJ stacks in GPPs. DJ is an interesting player for me this week. We talked about this on the podcast, Bobby, you and I. We're not going there, but it makes a ton of sense as far as if you're being contrarian, if you're trying to be contrarian, you're getting an elite running back at pretty much, in my opinion, sub 5% ownership here. And his run the pass game really so he has a big run the pass game. So game script's not going to affect him much. And we talked about the middle of the field being a vulnerability here for the Rams. So I can see it. I don't think I'm going there though. I can totally see it, but I'm not playing enough lineups to do it, I guess is the right way to say this. Any thoughts there? I know you maxed out. Any thoughts on DJ?
I'm not using any DJ.
Yeah, I figured you wouldn't be using him this week either. It's just I don't think it's necessary. I understand that the thought process behind it. I just don't think it's necessary. All right, let's move on to the next game, and this is the game where you're going to be talking about your tight end of the week here, and we got New England at Jacksonville. I know. So let's go ahead and break this down. Now I like a lot of people don't like this New England side of the ball. I think this is where you can win a tournament if you mix some of these chalk, Pittsburgh players and Chiefs players and Saints players. If you mix some of those chalks in with players from this game, I think you're going to have a unique roster built. Give me your thoughts here, Bobby. I know you like this game quite a bit. I know you like the New England. I know you'll be rooting for them today with your jersey on, as you do every Sunday. Give me your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think Brady's too cheap. I think Gronk's a great leverage play off Kamara, and if you have to choose Kamara and Gurley, they're both too high priced. So I just figured I'd split the difference. Maybe Gronk gets 2 touchdowns, then you're in a really good spot. So it's kind of where I'm extremely overweight on Gronk in tournaments.
I think that's a very good move. I really do.
It made sense because I kept trying to jam those two in, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And then value opened up, and it seemed like it was the play. I also like Hogan if he's in the slot and doesn't see Jalen Ramsey's coverage, which I think he ran 20% of his routes out of the slot last week. So I think at 5,200, he's good to bounce back, I would imagine. James White as well. He's going to get all that usage, tournaments, cash, wherever you want to use him, as long as Rex isn't playing. He's a great play.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. I like this. This offense quite a bit, a little bit more than I feel like I should like it. I think, like you mentioned, I like the call on Brady's price being way too low. I like Hogan's price a ton as well. 5,400 to me is very good. There's so much upside with Gronk that I think, like you mentioned, great tournament leverage play. So you might have talked me into getting myself exposed to some Gronk here for sure this weekend. So I like it quite a bit. On the other side, I don't have any interest. I know we can run this back with something, but it doesn't look like Fournette's going to play. Does that mean that Yeldon becomes a viable option for you at 5,600?
I don't know. You could run it back. I don't think I'm gonna probably use this in like the San Fran game, I would imagine. Yeah, no, Yeldon, Corey Grant, but I think Corey Grant's too expensive, even though he's had good games against the Patriots before. Yeldon has too, so I think this is a really good spot for Brady as that horn honks from
I
across.
mean, that's the approval right there, in my opinion. I
Yeah,
mean, if you guys are listening, that is the approval on Brady. I mean, it's you said Brady, and it was like just let go, do
yeah.
it. In fact,
Brady seems like
I'm
it's
changing one of my lineups, and I'm starting it with Brady and Gronk right as we speak. Right now, I'm doing this. So there you go, guys. Just put Brady in your lineup. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. I mentioned this. I believe I mentioned this in the podcast. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, like their biggest weakness is the play action pass. And last season, the Patriots were number 3 in the league and running 28% of their plays as play action passes. So I know there's some people that might say, oh, they got to establish their run and whatnot. That's not true. I don't think they have to establish their run to be successful at the, at the play action pass. Some news here also, it looks like Sony Michel and Rex Burkhead will be suiting up this week. Does that change anything for you as far as?
Oh yeah, no, it definitely does.
Let me see here. Let me double check, but I believe I just saw that pop up. Because to me, that's going to change everything. James White. Well, he's expected to suit up, but okay. So Burkhead is expected to suit up against the Jaguars, but needs to clear the pregame warmups without any setbacks. That's the news on him. And then on let me see. Okay, so both of them are expected to. It's not confirmed. Are expected to be active. I think that's a big piece of news that we should kind of discuss here, because if they both play, even if one plays, I still think it's going to kind of cap what we were expecting as far as touches and opportunity for White. I still think White's a fine play in PPR formats like DraftKings is because of his involvement in this offense, but I do think it will limit that upside that we may have been expecting there.
Yeah, I think you're right. As of right now, I'm still on White though. I still think he's a fine play. I really do. I don't think you should be, getting off of him entirely because of that news. I just think it's worth noting because I honestly don't mind. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
It's a negative correlation, but 2 Patriots running backs in this game, just because they're lacking a real slot receiver in Julian Edelman, and last year Rex Burkhead ran a good majority of his routes out of the slot, and so does James White. I don't think it's like the worst idea in tournaments.
And I actually think that this news really helps Tom Brady. I really do, because now he has some additional guys that can catch passes out of the backfield there, with some with good speed and some elusiveness that can break one for pretty long gain and maybe even a touchdown. So again, this is a game where I have far more interest in, and I think the field, and I think you're on board with that. So that's a good thing here. Gronk, obviously the priority in this game. Tom Brady right behind him, and for me, the third player would be Hogan. I think he makes a lot of sense. I do think he can have a really big game, and he's just way underpriced. Anything else in this one before we go? I have nothing on the Jaguar side. I mentioned Yeldon being okay if you want to go there at 5,600. I do think you're going to get him at a lower ownership, and he's potentially going to get pretty much every down work here. And last week we saw 7 targets, so he can catch passes out of the backfield. I don't know if you need to go there this week.
No, I'm with you. I don't think you really need to go there.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to this final game of the slate, Oakland at Denver. I mentioned this in the podcast, and this has really not changed for me. One of my favorite stacks this week is Case Keenum with either Emmanuel Sanders or Demaryius Thomas. I like going with Thomas. I think he's going to be the lesser owned of the two. And he was just as active as Emmanuel Sanders was last week. Emmanuel Sanders had 11 targets. Thomas had 10. They both found the end zone. It was just a matter of the yardage and the efficiency. But I really do think this is a smash spot here for them. for both of them really, because this Oakland defense looked really bad last week. I don't think they're any good. I do think they're going to struggle here. So I in Denver, so I do like them. This trio quite a bit. I will be running a Case Keenum and a Demaryius Thomas stack, and I do think at 5,600, I think I'm going to be heavily exposed, probably over the field on Thomas this week. Any thoughts here, Bobby?
No, I like the Thomas call. Obviously, the boat outside does too. Cooper Kupp, I think I mean not Cooper Kupp. I'm sorry, Emmanuel Sanders. Like him as well. I like the Denver offense. I don't think it's bad to look their way, especially Case Keenum. They're allowing him to sling it. So even Freeman to have a bounce back week. I know he let a lot of people down last week, but
I'm going back to that well this week, man. I like it. He had 15 touches and his yards per carry were fine. He just didn't get it done. He wasn't involved in the passing game. But I think this is a far, far superior matchup for him than it was last week. And I think the game script here is going to favor him a little bit more than it did last week. I think he's a strong tournament player, really. I really do. He's one of those backs that if things line up properly for him, he can have, easily, a couple touchdowns here. In my opinion, I do think as far as tournaments are concerned, like if you're building lineups in the Millionaire Maker, I do think you got to have some Freeman exposure because he's virtually going to have zero ownership here, and this could be a very, very good spot for him. Anything on the Oakland side, I know Jared Cook is probably going to garner some ownership. A lot of people saw what he did last week. This is a similar matchup, whereas Denver's really good defending on the outside and a little bit soft in the middle. So I can totally see Cook do some damage here. I'm personally not going there this week. I wouldn't blame anyone for doing so, especially after what we saw last week. But I'm not having, I don't have the same expectations for him this week. What are your thoughts?
I like Cook. I like him versus Denver. I streamed tight ends versus Denver last season, and Cook's a beast, man. Like that guy, a flat-out monster. I have no issues with Cook. I think it's a good way to attack the Denver secondary. Chris Harris usually takes away the slot receiver. Amari Cooper was in the slot last week. Maybe they'll try to get him away from move him outside this week because Chris Harris is there, but Chris Harris would probably follow him anyways. So, yeah, I like Cook. I think that's how you attack that defense.
Yeah, I had mentioned, and I'm not going there, but if you're trying just to find a extremely dirt cheap player. Jalen Richard last week, 11 targets. We talk about, the middle of the field being soft here. He can catch past the backfield. I do think this is going to be a similar game script where they're going to be chasing points in Denver this week. So I'm not going there. I did have some exposure, but again, we've talked about how things have changed since the beginning of the week, where a ton of value has opened up because of injuries or whatnot. So my lineup construction now is a little bit different than it was earlier in the week. So I don't have any Jalen Richard. But if you're playing, like, for instance, just the afternoon slate or something like that, take that into consideration. He's still probably going to go unowned. He's only 3,400. So it might make some sense for those who are just, breaking down the slates in early and late slate and whatnot. Any final thoughts here, Bobby?
No, I think we hit on the majority.
All right. So let's kind of just, we let me see if there's any injury, news that we got to see. We got to mention before we go. So Antonio Callaway is starting in week 2 against the Saints for the Browns. That to me is an interesting piece of information. He is the min. He is 3K on the dot. Are you going to consider something like that in the Millionaire Maker?
Probably not.
No?
I don't think I'm going to have the time at this point.
Yeah, but that is a piece of interesting information, in my opinion. I think that can change some things. What final thoughts on this slate before we get going? I know you got a ton of things to do on your end and finish up some of those lineups. I do as well. Some of the things we've chatted about have kind of steered me in a different direction than I was before we started the show. So I do want to get some of my lineups adjusted here. Any final thoughts?
Uh, I think we're pretty all set. That Njoku play might change because of the Callaway starting. I don't think it really will make a difference, though. I don't think.
I still think he's a fine play. I still think he's a fine play.
Njoku's a solid play. I like that play actually.
But I might just create one more lineup into the Millionaire Maker just because start it off with Callaway and see what happens. Might just do that. I think, just to kind of recap here, we like that Pittsburgh and Kansas City game quite a bit. You went over how you like the San Fran, the Garoppolo and Kittle in cash, and there's just a lot of targets that you gotta pretty much put in there this week that we've talked about. The core plays, we mentioned those, so it was a fun show, man. Good luck to everyone. Thank you guys for tuning in. Bobby, let them know where they can follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, Bobby Gomes DFS on Twitter, and you can catch my stuff on Football Diehards Thursday and Fridays.
Yep, and I am at Armando_Marsal on Twitter, and you can find all my work at Football Diehards, pretty much an article a day there. So make sure you guys tune in every Sunday. We are also on Thursdays, and we'll be pumping out the podcast. I believe we're going to start recording Wednesdays now, so we have a little bit more information, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next week, good luck to everyone.
Good luck, everyone.